the presenter is Dr. Satyanarayana, followed with Rekha. So topic is India's gender literacy status with neighboring countries. Dr. Satyanarayana.
Very good afternoon, all of you. Respected dignitaries on the dais, of the dais, co-paper presenters, and dear participants. I am standing before you, share my few thoughts on the topic of India's gender literacy status with neighboring countries. When you look, let me start that. The outline of the paper, as proceeded in the four, they have the paper is divided into 5 divisions. The first, I am going to highlight theoretical and literature review concerning the nature of the study. Second one, highlighted on the research gap and objectives. Third one, data sources and methodology. Fourth, result and discussion. Last one is on the devoted to conclusions. When you look at some of the theoretical and empirical literature regarding education, we are living in a knowledge economy. Education is considered as one of the prime engine of the economic development. Subjective concepts of knowledge, education is a central component of the growth. When you look at the endogenous growth model, primarily developed by Romer and Lucas, they have highlighted the investment in education and investment in knowledge definitely is boost for the economic development of any countries. Moreover, the great economic thinkers of our country like Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, they most insisted more investment on education, which will be lead to the development of any countries. In this direction, education recognizes the both means and end of the development, and the Human Development Index, like it was introduced in the 1990, primarily focused on the education. Education is one of the components. Other two components are health and standard of living. On that, the multidimensional poverty index was developed in the year of 2010, which was developed by Sabina Alkari and James Foster of Oxford University. They also focused education as one of the prime engines for the development of any countries. In this direction, when you look at the Indian context, most of the Indian thinkers and Indian policy makers thought that education definitely leads to the development of our country. I already said that from Jawaharlal Nehru to till many thinkers, they are concentrated on the education is one of the prime engine of economic growth. They wanted to investment more on education sectors. Literacy is considered a fundamental human rights as per our Indian constitution. And Census of India is declared that those persons are read and write above 7 years is considered as a literate. Education, Indian policymakers and most of the research studies by Indians and other persons also, they have more highlighted on the education is the end and means of the development of our country. When you look at India and its neighboring states, India shares its border with 7 countries, and India is not sharing the border with Sri Lanka and Myanmar, although they have considered as neighboring countries of our country. In this study, the 9 countries are taken as a neighboring countries of India, and here my paper is basically touch upon the India's literacy status with these 9 neighboring countries. What are the sectors needs to be boosted, and which countries are better, which countries not better, what is the performance of India in regarding status of education compared than its neighboring countries. When you look at the research gap, when I took up this paper for the preparing of paper, I identify many research gaps. None other studies are discussed regarding status of Indian education with neighboring countries by using gender gap in literacy rate and gender parity index in literacy rate. there are lack of the studies regarding highlighted on the gender gap and gender parity index for the education development with the neighboring countries of our country. That's why our current paper is try to fill this research gap in this direction. This paper have two objectives. The first objective is compare India's literacy rates by age group and gender wise by its neighboring countries. The second objective is examine the India's gender specific literacy status in comparison with neighboring countries, employing some of the metrics like gender gap in literacy rates and gender parity index for the adult literacy rates. Data and methodology, most of the data is taken by World Atlas, USI data of UNESCO, and the World Factbook and World Bank website. There are some of the simple statistical tools like maximum and minimum and standard deviation, mean, averages has been used to interpretation of the data. The two prominent indicators like gender gap for the literacy rate has been used, and another indicators like gender parity index also used to identify what are the gender gap in gender parity index among the 9 countries including India to compare the education status of our country with the neighboring countries. This table is highlighted on the computing India's literacy rates by age group with its neighboring countries. When you look at India is very good at in youth, literacy rates. India has recorded 95.7% in the youth literacy rate. Compare than India has got highest youth literacy rates compared than some of the neighboring countries, but adult literacy rate is compared than very low. But elderly literacy rates are very low in our country. It was recorded 45%, 4% only. But Indian policy makers have to be think regarding increasing in the elder literacy rate and adult literacy rate. But we are talking about young India. And nearly 67% of the Indian people comes under the age group of adult age group. Most of the growing economics, even developed economics, also looking at India. For India is having the highest number of the youth population. Then we still needs to improve the education attainment for the adult age group, because adult age group has recorded only 17.4% of the literacy rate. It was very low compared to other neighboring countries like China and Myanmar and Sri Lanka, all those things. These are some of the descriptive statistics for literacy rate by age group. When you look at some of the range, all the range, youth range, you come from 52.8%, adult 69.9%, elderly 17.9%. India has better, India got better performance in all the minimum values of the either youth, adult and elderly. But when we look at the maximum value for youth, adult and elderly, India is only near in terms of youth literacy rate and the maximum level, but it's not up to the level of maximum level. But India has to be taken very serious action regarding increasing all the maximum value for the all the age group of either youth and adult and elderly literacy rates. These are the comparing India's adult literacy rate by gender and gender gap with its neighboring countries. The highest, the gender gap is computed from subtracting male literacy rate from the female literacy rate. Higher the gender gap indicates higher the gender disparities in literacy rate. Lower the gender gap indicates lower the gender gap from male and female. India has recorded 16.6 gender gap in terms of the literacy rate. It is very high compared to some of the other neighboring countries. The countries like Bangladesh and Maldives have got very low of the gender gap index. But India has to be, there are some of the very disparities in gender gap in terms of the literacy rate. This has to be taken very need to action regarding reduce the gender gap in terms of the literacy rate. This is the gender parity index in India and its neighboring countries. The gender parity index values lies between 0 to 0.97 to 1.10. The one indicates the equal gender parity. The below indicates the gender parity is favor for the female. Above one is favor for the male. India has recorded 1.2. It means that it was taken from the 2021 data. It means that India is very good at both male and female gender parity index. Just as some of the conclusions, I made some of the conclusion based on some of the previous data. Elderly literacy rate needs to be considered. I already said that elderly literacy rate is very low at India. It was recorded only for 45%, 8%. This has to be taken into very consideration when we look at some of the countries like Japan and China. These are the countries, the elder population got highest of the literacy rate. That's why they have achieved more in terms of the elderly population. But in India, the elder population should not take very seriously compared to youth and adult literacy rates. Gender disparities in literacy needs to be eradicated. Gender gap in literacy rate and gender parity index should be strengthened. Needs for the comprehensive approach like Sarva Shikshana Abhiyan, other some of the approaches needs to be strengthened in our country. Each and everyone follow the motto of each one and teach one. Public-private partnership and interventions of NGOs, and these are the some of the actions needs to be strengthened in order to spreading of the literacy rates among the both male and female. And Sarva Shikshana Abhiyan and some of the recent initiatives for the education has to be strengthened for the better literacy rates among male and female. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, madam. The data for the literacy rate I have not taken for the single year. It has taken for the different year for the different countries. Then then I am comparing 9 countries with India. That's why for comparison purpose I have taken just 1 or 2 years just differences. But I tried to that I could not collected the same year's data for the literacy rates. That's why I am comparing whatever the data available. I have to take and compare those. The most of the data is taken from the World Atlas and USI data from UNESCO. I have not taken the data from the Census of India. If I taken the census data from the Census of India regarding the literacy rate, but other countries data not available for the same year. Then census data only available for the 2011, 2021. But for other countries it's not available. That's why whatever the data is mentioned in World Fact Book and the World Atlas and US data, these are the data has to be taken. US data sources has accumulated all the data, recent available data on the some of the socio-economic indicators like education, something like that, man.
Just we have brought up 2 reforms in education policy. During the period of 1986, by the former Prime Minister, late Rajiv Gandhi Garu, and 2020 new education policy by the present Prime Minister of India. So we didn't cover and we didn't identify exactly what is the impact of all these programs as well as the new education policy on the India's gender status. What is your opinion? What is the impact? Do you have any idea?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please.